Hello, I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and you're listening to Well, Hello Anxiety, a podcast where we end the struggle with anxiety and build our toolkit of practical skills to thrive. Hello, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I'm welcoming back a very special guest, and very is in capital letters and underlined and circled because this is a very special guest and a very special woman who I'm lucky to call a friend. If you haven't heard our previous episodes and been touched by her work, and I know you don't know who I'm talking about yet, but all will be revealed in a moment, I'm incredibly grateful that you're connected with her through our time and our conversation together today. Sarah Rusbatch isn't only changing lives, she's saving them. And I know that that's a big call. I know. And I don't know that I've ever said that before on the podcast, but it'll all make sense as our conversation unfolds today. I also want to add that Sarah's work has actually had a profound impact on my own life. And so I'm so incredibly thankful to you, Sarah. And I want to start by welcoming you to the podcast and also congratulating you on your book, which is out in the world now. It's called Beyond Booze, How to Create a Life You Love Alcohol-Free. Sarah, welcome to another episode.
Thank you, Jodi. What an introduction. I had goosebumps and a bit of a lump in my throat as you were speaking then. Thank you. I don't think I've ever been introduced quite like that before.
Oh, Sarah. Oh, look, honestly, Sarah and I were chatting off air, listeners, before we kind of hit record. And I was just thanking Sarah for reaching out, as we do when we've got work that we're so passionate about, and we want nothing more than to be able to share what we love and make a change in people's lives. And when Sarah and I first connected about a podcast episode, it was like, heck yes, let's do this. And we've since done 2 episodes. And when Sarah was over in Melbourne, we connected as families and we had fish and chips on the beach. And I was lucky enough to see Sarah at an event that we were both with in Sydney, and I get to see Sarah at her book launch, which is coming up very soon as well. And I'm very excited for you and your book, Sarah, because of the work that you're doing and the difference that it's making for people. And I'm now alcohol-free, and it's directly as a result of my conversation, friendship and connection with Sarah and her work. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And one of the things that you write in your book, Sarah, is that you don't have to be an alcoholic to quit. And I was not an alcoholic, and I had my many reasons for letting go of it. And life is just so brilliant, and I'm grateful to you and for your messaging. So I wanted just to sort of let listeners know who haven't heard your wonderful work before that Sarah is an accredited grey area drinking coach. And if you're not familiar with that term, Sarah will explain. She's a menopause coach, a passionate advocate for women's health and happiness. I've got H and H. Have I said that right?
Yeah.
A passionate advocate of women's health and happiness, especially in midlife. She's a wife. She's a mum. She's a speaker. And of course, she is an author. Sarah, you removed alcohol from your life in April of 2019. And it wasn't an overnight decision, no doubt. There were some real key moments that you write about in the book that kind of led to your ultimate decision to sort of let go of it altogether, having had periods of your life where you'd sort of had a sober month or a little bit of time away. Sarah, can you please paint a picture for our listeners of what life looked like before your decision to sort of let go of alcohol as a part of your lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't call myself an alcoholic. I drank a lot, but I certainly didn't call myself an alcoholic. I didn't drink every day. I didn't drink in the morning. I wasn't shaking in the morning, waking up needing a drink. But I had reached the point where alcohol for me, it was something that was very prominent in my life. It was my go-to crutch for anything uncomfortable that happened in my life, any kind of adversity, any kind of difficulty. The go-to would be, I need a drink. And that was stress. That was an argument with my husband. That was the kids being naughty. That was disappointment about something not happening at work that I wanted to happen. It was loneliness. It was any of those emotions that we can feel that are uncomfortable that I just never, as a kid or as a teenager, been taught how to sit with any of these emotions. And I started drinking at 14. And 14, I very quickly learned alcohol kind of made everything go away.
Mm.
And so for me, my drinking, yeah, there was a couple of incidents that I talk about in the book where, I had one incident where I fell over at a party and I cut my face. I had another incident where after a really big bender, I woke up in the morning and I couldn't drive my son to a cricket game that he was in because I was still over the limit at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning.
Mm.
Both of those incidents impacted me, but it wasn't them alone. It was the constant feeling that I was turning to alcohol all the time, but I stopped getting what I wanted from it. It stopped making me feel happy and vibrant. It stopped being something that was just so much fun. It became I need a drink. And then that started to lead to all of the negative physical impact and mental impact on anxiety, on my sleep, on weight gain, on losing motivation, on just on the way I spoke to myself, Jodi. Like there would be most mornings after a few drinks the night before, I'd wake up in the morning and the first thing I would say to myself in my head would be, oh, you loser. You drank again last night when you said you wouldn't. As you can imagine what your days are like if the first thing you say to yourself in the morning is calling yourself all those negative things. It just meant the self-talk in my head was just spiraling and becoming more and more negative. But on the outside, no one thought I had a problem. I was Sarah the party girl. I was so much fun. And that's what I think kept me trapped in that cycle for so long.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Something you said in a previous conversation we had is that the way people come to expect who we are, how we behave, the choices we make, especially people that have known us for a very long time. And so that was how you were known. And you write and you write so beautifully. I love the storytelling in the book. I love that because it just takes you to a place like where you can kind of see the journey that you were on, and the nights where you'd say you'd pop around someone's house after school and a bottle of wine would be opened, and then before you know it, you've got to leave the car, and then you've got to try to get it back the next morning before school or before weekend activities or whatever it is. And the storytelling that you share is so powerful, and one of the things that I know must have been really hard for you, which you say is hard for, or is something to expect for anyone who might make a change, is what other people have to say about it and what they say to you and what they think about it and how they really don't necessarily support the decision. Unlike any letting go of any other, whether it's an addiction or any other drug use, whether it's cigarettes or marijuana, or you'd be applauded, but when it's alcohol, it's questioned. It can be questioned. And so I've even experienced that. I had the question, when did you get so boring? And I was like, excuse me, what was it like for you? What was your experience when you made the decision? What did your friends and family have to say about it?
Yeah, and I write about this in the book because I don't think I went about it in a way that helped me. And what I write about in the book is this is what I would have done differently with the power of hindsight. Yeah. So I felt a huge amount of shame about the fact that I felt like the only option for me was to stop drinking. I felt like there was something wrong with me, why couldn't I moderate when other people could? Why did I turn to alcohol in the way I did? I thought it was my fault. And I felt shame around that. And so I didn't want to say, I was ashamed to say to anyone, I've been really struggling with how alcohol's been impacting me. And so I've taken it out of my life, which in actual fact is such an empowering statement. Yes. But I didn't say that. What I said was initially, I'm just trying to lose a bit of weight. Because I was ashamed of the fact that I felt like I was letting other people down as well. I felt like I was letting my friends down and my husband down because I was Sarah the party girl and they loved getting drunk with me. Yeah. And so I felt so much guilt around it as well, which I had to work through. So I would say, I'm just trying to lose weight. But when you say that, people are like, they think that they can twist your arm because they're like, oh, go on, just have one. Don't be so boring. Yeah. Whereas I think in actual fact, if I'd started off by saying alcohol's really impacting my mental health, it's really impacting how I talk to myself. If people knew what was going on in my head and I'd articulated that better, I think I probably would have had just a different response.
Yes.
But it's hard because I would see people who I would ordinarily have gone out drinking with on nights out, great. That's one of the things about social media, what everyone's doing all the time.
Yeah.
And I would see that I hadn't been invited, which I could only assume had been because I wasn't drinking.
Yes.
And that's hard.
Yes.
It's hard enough to remove alcohol. And it's even harder when you feel like you're being ostracized from your friendship group.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's the thing. And we think about social media and feeling excluded or left out. We think about that often from the point of view of what our kids are seeing around their friendships and things. But it's the same for us as well. And really tough and sad that you were left out. And if that's the reason, and perhaps that's something that you understand well, if that continued and new friendships form and things change. I mean, our friendships do change for different reasons over our life, but it's brilliant that you can sit here now and older and wiser and the benefit of hindsight, as you said, that it's really empowering to be able to say, I wasn't feeling good about the way it was impacting on my life, and that's a really empowering thing to be able to say. And for listeners, if you're thinking about making a change or just becoming sober curious, which is a word that Sarah will explain in a moment too, then I think it's nice to sort of feel equipped with some responses, because inevitably that there'll come a time when you might have to answer that question. And I remember sitting down at dinner with a couple of really good lifelong friends, and the four of us were out to dinner and they were waiting to see what I ordered. I could tell that, and I ordered a lemon, lime and bitters. And I know there's a little bit of alcohol in bitters, but that was sort of my drink, because what I've found, which is what you've said, is it's really hard to get some really nice non-alcoholic options. So soft drink often is the way I've been going. But anyway, they're like, right. And it was kind of like, right, what's this all about? And I said, it's a conscious decision, that it's mostly because of the way it affected my sleep. I don't feel good when I wake up in the morning. It's certainly a benefit for my mental health and my anxiety, absolutely. And it's something that I know is making a really big difference to my health, and I feel great about it. And so I was able to sit there confidently and answer the question. And so for you to be able to share that hindsight, that benefit of hindsight, what you could have said differently, is really helpful. For listeners who don't know what grey area drinking and sober curious kind of refer to, can you give us an explanation, please?
Yeah. So grey area drinking is a relatively new term, because the way that we've talked about alcohol use before has been you're a social drinker or you're an alcoholic. And it's such black and white thinking, right? Because what's the number? When does someone become a social drinker to being an alcoholic? Like what's the definition there? Whereas what the health sector now describes alcohol use disorder as being mild, moderate or severe, because it's a scale, it's a spectrum. I wasn't an alcoholic. I didn't describe myself as an alcoholic, which in that scale would be severe, and that means physical dependency on alcohol. And let's just really set the scene here, that if you have physical dependency on alcohol, you need medical support to withdraw, because you can die from withdrawal from alcohol. And alcohol is one of only 3 substances that the human body can die from withdrawal from. And so we've got this scale as mild, moderate and severe. And I call grey area drinking the mild to moderate of that scale. So if we were to think of a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being someone who doesn't drink, 10 being someone with that physical dependency on alcohol, grey area drinking would be about a 4 to an 8 on that scale.
Okay.
And so we've got past the point of take it or leave it drinking. So we're not someone that is just like, I don't think I'm going to drink tonight, where, just don't care about it, don't think about it. We're not at that point. We've started getting to the point where it's like, oh, I need a drink. Oh, I'm looking forward to a drink. Or I'm disappointed when I can't drink. Or and there's a few signs which I talk about in the book and on my website of when we know that we've moved into that grey area. There's a guy in the UK who calls it middle lane drinking. So we're not, very lightly drinking, but nor are we at the severe end. We're in that middle lane, and he estimates there are 3 billion people across the world that fall into this category.
Goodness me. There's a movement, really, isn't there? There's a movement around not drinking, reducing drinking, non-alcoholic options have exploded. They're not always in the venues we want them to be in. But I tell you what, when you find a nice one, I messaged you, didn't I, and said, have you tried this Prosecco? Which, of course, you're all over it. It's just, I was delighted to arrive at actually it was Femim's Christmas drinks and at this great venue in Chadstone here in Melbourne. And it was so lovely to arrive, and when everyone was having bubbles and I could say, have you got anything non-alcoholic? Out comes a bottle of non-alcoholic bubbles in a beautiful flute, and I could walk around having a lovely drink, and then I went and bought myself another one, as well as I got the bartender to make me a delicious non-alcoholic cocktail with all this cucumber juice he'd made, and it was amazing. So, so there's a real movement, but like you say, there are he's estimating 3 billion people globally, then you've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that people in that middle lane, in that grey area drinking, we've normalised it. So we live in a society now that has normalised that level of drinking. You think about the number of mums groups, I don't know about you, Jodi, but definitely for me in the younger days, and I'm sure that today with, as we're recording this, the kids are going back to school and my Facebook feed is, it's full of celebrating with wine. And there's even they were talking about it on the radio this morning, all the mums that are going straight to the bottle shop today. And we've kind of just normalised mum needs wine.
Yes.
We're just now in a society that middle lane drinking, grey area drinking, which by the way, alcohol use disorder is anything above 14 units a week, which is approximately 8 glasses of wine if it's a decent pour of wine.
Yes.
So anything more than 8 glasses of wine a week is classed as alcohol use disorder. So that's someone who drinks 2 glasses 4 nights a week. Above, that is on the cusp then of moving into alcohol use disorder. Whereas we've got to remember as well that alcohol is really addictive. We build tolerance to it. So we used to get that high from 1 glass, and then we stop getting that high from 1 glass. We get it from 2 glasses, then we get it from 3 glasses, then it's the bottle. And it's really insidious and it's really subtle the way our alcohol use starts to increase. And then before we know it, I'm having a bottle of wine 3 or 4 nights a week. And all of a sudden, we're 2 or 3 times over the recommended units of alcohol for women in Australia.
Goodness, how many glasses in a bottle of wine, Sarah?
It depends on your pour, but it can be kind of
really
for me, it was probably about 3. No, I think usually it's kind of 5 to 6.
Okay.
But depending as well on the alcohol content of a bottle of wine, there can be 10 units in 1 bottle of wine, depending on how strong it is.
Of course, because it's the alcohol content that can change depending on, of course.
So some are 9% and some are 14%.
Okay, thank you. I know one of the things that got me thinking after we've spoken in previous episodes, and you've written about it in your sober action steps in the book. And the book, it's just going to be something that I am going to be talking about when I'm speaking to Sarah. I'm really recommending this book to people who are on this journey because it's written in a way that's really compassionate, and you create opportunities for people to reflect and places for people to start. And one of the things that I started to do after we first started talking about this, and you've written about it, is this idea of just having a look around and just opening our eyes to kind of what the messaging is. You share one particular example of a brand that shall remain nameless, and the window around Mother's Day and the way that the window was dressed with a cask of wine, of all things, in the hand, and wine printed all over the sleepwear, or glasses of wine or bottles of wine printed over the sleepwear. But also watching shows that the dependence on alcohol for stress relief it's kind of like ubiquitous, isn't it? When we open our eyes to the messaging around us, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it really is. And Mother's Day is just astonishing. Like, for your listeners, just watch out on the next Mother's Day, just trying to find a Mother's Day card that doesn't have a reference to wine, or even a female friend birthday card. It's we just have come into this place where we are continually being bombarded with messages that we as women need wine as the solution to everything that life throws at us. You think about TV shows and, the stressed woman comes home from work, she throws her coat over the chair in the kitchen and she heads straight to the fridge, she pulls out a bottle of wine, she pours it and she stands there drinking it. Like, we are seeing that messaging continuously. And that's just product placement. And then, of course, we've got the marketing, we've got the advertising. And I talk in the book about specifically when the alcohol companies segmented their marketing and started to directly target women because they identified that women were not spending enough money on alcohol. And so they wanted to drive their sales. But what we've lost along the way in all of this is that women are really, really vulnerable to the health impact of alcohol compared to men. Women cannot metabolize alcohol in the same way as men. And I am not anti-alcohol, but I am pro-awareness.
Yes.
And there are so many people that don't have the awareness about the fact that women simply cannot metabolize alcohol in the same way that a man can.
No, once upon a time the messaging was, well, women 1 drink an hour, men can have 2. I remember that. when I was, and I chose when I was 18, a long time ago, to either drink or drive, and so I never really kind of had to worry too much about where am I at kind of thing. But that was kind of, I remember that was kind of one of the messages that was embedded, was about kind of recognizing where you're at with the alcohol metabolism. But tell us please how alcohol, and look, these are a bit sobering, for, pardon the pun. The facts here are quite sobering, what you share about our cancer risk. And in particular, that was one that really stood out for me. It can be a bit hard to hear, but it's really important. Can you share with us a little bit about the way we as women are more vulnerable, and some of the health risks and some of the stats?
So what we now know is that women, we produce less of an enzyme called ALDH, alcohol dehydrogenase. And this is an enzyme that breaks down and metabolizes alcohol so that we clear it out of our system really quickly. Women have less of that enzyme than men. So therefore, for every woman that drinks the same amount of alcohol as a man, more alcohol enters a woman's bloodstream than a man's, because a man is more efficient at metabolizing the alcohol with this enzyme than a woman is. So we've got that as a first fact. The second fact is, as we age, for women especially, our liver starts shrinking. Who knew that we have shrinking livers?
I did not know.
And the liver volume begins to shrink, and we produce even less of this enzyme, which means as we get older, this is why for me, I was like, why are my hangovers so much worse in my 40s than they used to be in my 20s? And this is because we have less of this enzyme as we age, and our liver cannot metabolize alcohol in the same way in our 40s as it does in our 20s. So what this means is, again, more alcohol enters our bloodstream. When you have more alcohol in the bloodstream, you're then more vulnerable to the health risks of alcohol. So women are more prone to liver disease. We're more prone to the 7 types of cancer that are directly caused by alcohol, with one of them specifically being breast cancer. We're more prone, women become addicted to alcohol quicker than men, because of the way that our body metabolizes alcohol. The other thing that's different between a woman's body and a man's body is that a woman has less water in her body than a man does. Water dilutes alcohol. So again, for a man, if you have a man and woman side by side drinking the same amount of alcohol, the enzyme plus the water content in the man's body means that they're going to clear out, dilute, and metabolize the alcohol much faster than a woman is. So this is where it starts to get dangerous with the whole, and I was very much part of this, the 1990s, girl power, we can match the boys pint for pint down the pub, all of this female empowerment, which at the time for me, I thought was absolutely brilliant, but nobody was actually talking about, hang on a minute. And then, a woman's body can't metabolize alcohol quite the same as a man. The other thing for women to know is that depending on where we are in our cycle, when our estrogen is higher, we're going to get more drunk than when it's not. So you know how sometimes you could have half a bottle of wine and feel absolutely fine.
Yes.
And then 2 weeks later, you could have half a bottle of wine and feel really pissed and feel quite dreadful the next day. And it's all to do with your estrogen levels. And this is really important that our girls know this, that our daughters know this, because you might be able to go out one night and have all your wits about you and be able to be okay. And you might drink the same amount 2 weeks later and be absolutely smashed and falling over. And from a safety perspective for our girls as well, we need to make sure that there is some awareness around this.
Yes. Why is the awareness not out there for women when it comes to these risks in terms of safety and the way alcohol affects us at different times of our menstrual cycle, the way it affects our physiology differently because of the lack or the lesser amount of the alcohol dehydrogenase enzyme, and simply the hydration, the water the size of us, why is that messaging not everywhere? Why do I dare to say, most women probably aren't aware. Is that a reasonable thing to say?
Yeah, like they've done university in Melbourne actually did a study to ask how many women were aware of the fact that alcohol causes breast cancer, and less than 20% of the thousands of women that they interviewed were aware.
Wow.
And there's a reason for this, Jodi, and it comes down to who's got the budget, who's got the money, and who's going to miss out if the alcohol companies don't keep making the money that they're making. Like, there's a lot of information out there that's coming out that, there's even like alcohol charities that are funded by the alcohol companies. There's research that is sent out there that's funded by the alcohol companies that is to say, oh, red wine's good for the heart. Like it's hard to get the information out there, but it's on the World Health Organization's website from last year. They put it up there and they've now clearly said alcohol is a direct cause of breast cancer. And I think that this is going to start to get shared more and more. It just takes time, because up until recently, there is more of a movement happening. There's more people like me all over the world that are talking more about this. And it's not about like, trying to be the fun police and stop everyone having fun or anything, but it is simply about saying people need to make an informed choice. We now have the facts about tobacco that we didn't have initially. And many people, as a result of having those facts, chose to stop smoking no matter how hard it was, because they knew how hard it was and how bad it was for their health. And I feel like it's now we need to know the same about alcohol, because we now know what we didn't know then. And in 2019, there was a study in the Lancet that said alcohol is a level 1 carcinogen in exactly the same category as tobacco.
Isn't it something that came to mind when I've been reading through your book was, I wonder if there'll come a time when the kind of warnings that are on a cigarette package are on, alcohol labelling. I don't know. I wonder.
Oh, no, there was a thing on the news about it the other day. So it's coming into Ireland next year, and they have suggested it in Australia, and all the winemakers have gone mental and gone, no, it's hard enough for us as it is. You don't need to put these warnings on because it already says you shouldn't drink when you're pregnant. But I think we need a little bit more than that. Because the fact is that there are some people that just enjoy a glass of wine with dinner, and I am not taking that away from anyone. If you don't have a problematic relationship with alcohol, if you can have one and enjoy a taste of a lovely glass of wine with your dinner, and that is it, bloody go and enjoy it, right? Yeah. But the issue is that so many people don't fall into that category. Yeah. And there are many reasons for this, in terms of your brain neural pathways, in terms of your wiring, how much of a dopamine hit you get from alcohol, from conditioning, from society, from trauma. There's lots and lots of information as to why certain people will become more problematic with their relationship with alcohol than others. And I'm not saying we have to ban it completely. I'm not going for prohibition, but I am sharing that for a significant number of the population, it is problematic, and let's support those people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we can make informed choices.
Yeah.
That's at the end of the day, when you've got the information, trusted information, which your research is always broad and deep. And so then we can make decisions, and that's really how I came to make my decision. I'm 50 this year. I'm 50 in April, and I'm excited. I think getting older is such a gift, and Pete and I talk about it, and, as different, like his knee's not great, and I know that not everybody feels fit and well and healthy, but I just I think 50 for me, I'm kind of like, I want to be fitter and healthier and stronger. I want to have the next 50 years be even better, and just that awareness raising can just help us to make the decision that's right for us. Sarah, can you please tell us about the 3 M's when it comes to alcohol?
Yeah, so it's a great analogy to start where we think about our alcohol relationship. And the 3 M's are magic, medicine, and misery. So generally speaking, for most people, when we first start drinking alcohol, it's magic. It's, it really lights us up. We have so much fun with it. It's like we're going out, we're socializing. Maybe we're in our teens and our 20s. We don't really get many hangovers. And so alcohol's not problematic. It then can move to medicine. And this is where I see it happen so much with women, particularly middle-aged women. And like we now know, the stats are showing that Middle-aged women are drinking more than ever. And in Australia, it's the only demographic where alcohol use is going up and not down. And I have a group of 16,000 women, and I asked the question, why do you drink? No one said to have fun. No one. There were three reasons: boredom, stress, and loneliness. And that's what the alcohol has become the medicine for. It's medicine to stop them feeling those uncomfortable emotions.
Yeah.
And the moment we switch from alcohol being magic to medicine, we're moving into that gray area, because we stop building resilience for dealing with any of life's issues, because our go-to just becomes, I'm opening a bottle of wine. And then we go from medicine to misery. And that's where the alcohol starts taking hold of us. It's all we're thinking about. We're looking forward to that. We stop getting joy or pleasure from other things in our life. But when we drink it, we're not even getting the magic that we used to get. It's addiction. Yeah. It's full scale addiction. Yeah. And I read something interesting the other day, and they said, on that scale of magic, medicine, or misery, when should you stop drinking? And I thought they were going to say medicine, like when you notice you're using it as medicine. But what they said was actually, if you notice it's really big magic for you, you should probably stop then, because you are someone that is going to be so lit up by alcohol that's going to become your thing. Like, there's a really interesting podcast with Andrew Huberman, and he talks with his podcast about alcohol, which I so recommend any listeners go and listen to if they're interested in the science facts about alcohol. And he says he could look in a room of kind of teenage 20-year-olds all drinking, and he could probably spot which were the ones that would go on to develop alcohol use disorder, because they are the ones that are getting the most magic from the alcohol. They are the ones that are getting really lit up by it. They're becoming really animated. They're becoming really kind of like rah, rah, rah. Whereas others, because alcohol's a depressant. Yeah. So in some people, it just makes them go really tired. Like, I'd have a friend and she'd be like, I've had 2 glasses. Can I go home and have a cup of tea now? And I would be like, oh my God, I'm just getting started. Like, what do you mean? Like, for me, alcohol was big magic.
Yes.
And actually, looking back, that's what Huberman is saying. That's the time that you need to be really aware of it.
Yeah, it's such a great way to think about it. And and I think for us, those of us that are parents as well, to have these conversations, because, so much of what we do is the role modeling more than what we say, but just to start having conversations. And we in our house, I imagine your house is very much the same, talk about a lot of big issues, especially when we're both doing work we're so passionate about, and just having these opportunities for our kids to think differently. And even just, I'll just point out on the TV some of the things that, you've said before about the, protagonist or characters just going for the booze to kind of settle their stress down. And what we've spoken about before is how anxiety might be at one sort of baseline. We drink and it's depressed. We do feel more relaxed. But when it rebounds, when the alcohol wears off, we're back higher than where we began. Yeah. And so, but I want to come back to this idea of magic, because I saw you post that you've signed yourself up for a marathon. And I just think that is so awesome. And the fact that you talk about how you've got more time, you've got more energy and hobbies. That made me giggle when you wrote about hobbies in the book, because we want to have fun in our lives. It's really important for us, and life can feel quite the grind sometimes. And for all of us, we all have moments where things are really tough. But talk to us about creating magic and having fun in other ways, and the kind of things that you've been doing to not only have fun in your life, but also find that relaxation and that calm that we are often looking for in a bottle. Yeah.
So there's 2 neurotransmitters that I'll talk about here. So dopamine and GABA. And dopamine really is the motivation neurotransmitter. That's what really lights us up. And I know for me that alcohol massively, people get a different hit of dopamine from alcohol, depending on their neural pathway wiring. So some people might get massively lit up by alcohol and some people less so. I did, but for me, it started as sugar in my teen years. Like, it was that sugar was my comfort, and then it became alcohol and everything else. So what I've realized in all the work I've done on myself in sobriety is my dopamine pathway is strong and it likes to be kept busy. So I use that to my advantage. So I'm very driven, I'm very motivated, I get things done, and I keep that dopamine pathway fulfilled in what it wants. And I've always wanted to run a marathon. It's been a lifelong dream. And so I've signed up for my first one. And I know that that's going to really tick the box for me of a big goal to work towards. I know that I'll enjoy the process. I know some people are probably listening going, oh my God, what is she talking about? Enjoy the process of training for a marathon. But like, to me, that's what motivates me. But this is the work I do with all the thousands of women that I work with, is let's start finding out what it is for you. And it doesn't have to be like, if we think about fun is not just going out getting pissed in a bar with all your mates taking photos that look great on Instagram.
Yeah.
But that's what we've kind of narrowed our world into, as to that's what fun is. Fun, it actually is anything we do for our own joy and pleasure.
Yeah.
And when we actually open it up like that, we can start to go, well, what is fun for me? For some of my ladies, that's been learning horse riding lessons that they used to do when they were kids. I've got ladies who've gone back to tap dancing classes. I've got ladies who've gone back to university to study something that they've always loved. I've got a lady who's becoming a yoga teacher because she's always loved yoga and she's doing her yoga teacher training. I've got a 70-year-old client who's ditched booze, she lives very rurally. She's set up a jam making business and is selling her jam at the local farmers market. It's kind of like, let's start to explore, because we've got time, mental clarity, energy and motivation to start looking at, well, what are the things I want to add into my life if I take out alcohol? Yes. So for me, that's involved the dopamine pathway of the things that I'm quite goal driven. I like my running. I do ice baths a lot. Cold water therapy has been huge for me. It gives a really big dopamine hit and it keeps our dopamine levels high for 6 hours. If we do it for long enough in the morning. So that's been another one for me. But then I have to be really, really careful with managing my stress, because all of that is quite, alpha male dominant kind of energy. But I also need to really have the yin and yang. Yeah. And that's what I've been working on the last couple of years. And that is the soothing stuff. So I do a lot of somatic work. I do yin yoga. I do sound healing. I do breath work, meditation, walking. And I've just now got a relationship with my body where I know when I'm reaching stress and I don't want to get there. Yeah. And so I'm like, right, okay, what do I need to do? I need to go and do a 10-minute meditation. I need to go and do 10 slow, long breaths because I have a relationship with myself that I simply didn't have when I was drinking.
Yes, you understand yourself and you have mental clarity, time and incentive and motivation, like you say, from the dopamine, whereas often the vicious cycle of drinking and stress can be such a spiral down. I know that also when you share in your book about the different ways that people's lives are enriched, that it's not all about taking away. It's not all about taking away. And I love the table that you've got, sort of I'm just looking at the title of it now. Put a tick next to the ones you might like to try. Experimenting with fun. And we all need that in our lives. Life is not just about the working and parenting and, there's so much for us to do and experience and those brilliant examples from your community. I love the jam making, and something that I love to do is paint by numbers, because that to me is fun. That's relaxing, and it's anyway, that's just something that you can just buy them. I just buy them at Kmart, but there's some really nice ones popping up in my Instagram. So I think Instagram's been showing me some ads about these fancy paint by numbers that probably will be something I'll dive into eventually. But yeah, that idea of tuning into something that was really joyful back in the day before life got kind of overwhelming and busy is a really nice place for people to start. Sarah, I've heard you say before that there's a belief that drinking is a form of self-care, and you dispute that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, how can we, when we've got the facts that we've got, still consider consuming a level 1 carcinogen as self-care? Something that, particularly for women, massively impacts our menopause symptoms, disrupts our sleep. Like what many of the women I know find is even just 1 or 2 glasses will leave them with racing hearts at 1 or 2 in the morning. They can't get to sleep. They feel dreadful the next day. But because we live in a society and on social media, and as we were talking about in TV and films and everything, where it's constantly being depicted as self-care, it's really hard to rewire those neural pathways because our subconscious brain is constantly getting that information. And that's why I go quite in depth in the book, is what actually is self-care. It's something that nourishes your soul. It's something that makes you feel happier. And what I find is most people are using alcohol as their medicine for everything that life throws at them, but they're not actually looking after themselves in any real way. And when they remove alcohol, it gives them the time, they save money, they've got more clarity, as we talked about, to actually go and start practicing that deeper self-care.
Yes, because some of the things that you spoke about, for example, going and doing a yin yoga class, or doing a breath work, or learning breath work and working with someone, those expenses, the cost of alcohol probably far outweighs what the expenses are on things where you can learn how to look after yourself and learn some new skills and strategies that you can then bring into your home or continue with the classes. And so even just that idea about money saving, and this idea that how can we believe for a moment that it's self-care when there's so much harm that can come, and there's so much that it can take away from us, rather than self-care being a way to refuel and re-energize and replenish.
Yeah.
And so, oh goodness, it's such a powerful conversation. And that I guess one of the last things I want to ask is for listeners who are thinking, okay, and off air you shared with me that there's been a tough experience that you've had this week, okay? And so old Sarah would have reached for a glass of wine. What can somebody do when they're experiencing the stress that would normally send them reaching for wine or a G&T, as it was in my case, or whatever your alcohol of choice is? What's one thing that people could consider, contemplate, or practice, or be even curious about, as a different way of responding when they recognise that stress has built up?
But the awareness is key, because when we're aware, we can do something differently. Many of us act on autopilot. We just find ourselves reaching for the drink without even thinking about it. First of all, making sure there's no alcohol in the house. If your goal is to not drink alcohol, you don't need to have a cold bottle of wine in the fridge every time you go to make a cup of tea. So let's get the booze out of the house to start with, and have a go-to list of what are the things I know. So in the early days, for me, I had a bath every night at 5 o'clock. I am such an English girl. I love a bath. That is my go-to place. And I got sober in winter. Of course, I wouldn't do it now when it's 39 degrees here in Perth today, but I got sober in winter. And honestly, 5 o'clock every night I had a bath. A bath soothes my soul. A bath and some music and my favorite book and a beautiful scent. They just soothe and calm me straight away. So it's thinking about, what do I know works for me? Is it going for a walk? Is it having a cup of tea? Is it listening to really calming music? And also the other trick is play it forward. Will it ever just be one? If it was never just one before, it's never going to be just one now. So play it forward. Would I feel if I was to have this drink now and know that it's going to lead to more? And is that really what I want to be doing for myself? And, like I always say, quitting alcohol is hard, but staying drinking is hard too.
Yeah.
Because staying drinking, we're still waking up with that shame and self-loathing. We still have the interrupted sleep. Like, we now know scientifically you cannot get deep restorative sleep after you've had alcohol. It simply doesn't happen. So you're still zapping your energy. Even if you don't feel hungover, you're going to feel 5 out of 10. Yeah. And I just stopped wanting my life to only be 5 out of 10. I wanted more. Yeah. And so I always say, it's hard to stop drinking, but it gets easier. It's hard to stay drinking and it gets harder. So choose your hard and do the hard bit of sobriety with support of others to make it as easy as it can be. And hopefully my book provides enough tools to help people to just think about, okay, what could I do to make this easier? Yeah.
And you also have that beautiful community, which I want you to share with us about in a moment. But before we do, I want to read something from your book, because whenever I read a book, I'm loving absolutely that you've got this out into the world. Like, it's a huge thing. And I love reading the acknowledgements. It's a really special part of reading anybody's book for me, because it's a big job. It's massive. And so congratulations again, because it's a huge thing to do it's hard to convey what it takes to write a book like this, and there's always lots of people to thank and to acknowledge. And I always really enjoy reading that, and especially that our beautiful Kathy Rhodes got such a beautiful shout out. But towards the end of, or actually at the end of Sarah's special thanks, I want to read this for you. And this is Sarah talking to her ladies, the women who are part of her very, very special and beautiful community who Sarah supports, and of course they support each other. And finally, to my ladies, you know who you are. Thank you for trusting me to be your guide and your coach. Thanks for your honesty and openness and the love and commitment you show, not just yourselves, but each other. Our community is one of my proudest achievements in life, and it's because of you. So many of you say to me, Sarah, you changed my life. And I always say, no, you changed your life. I just showed you the way. But now I want to say to each and every one of you that you really have changed my life. Supporting and championing you fills my heart with joy each and every day. Thank you. I see you. I honour you. I am you. Oh, I feel teary. I feel teary reading that, Sarah. What you are doing for the women in your community, for the men and women who are listening here today, for the previous podcast episodes that we've done, which I encourage our listeners to go back to, the work that you've done to date and the incredible work that you'll continue to do moving forward. I say thank you, and I really do appreciate you sharing some of your very precious time with us here today on the podcast, and would love for you now to share with our listeners, how can they join your community? Where can they get a copy of your book? And how can they learn more about you and your wonderful, wonderful work?
Oh, thank you, Jodi. So the book is now available everywhere in Australia, on Amazon, Dimmicks, Booktopia, all bookstores. It's so lovely. In my community at the moment, all I'm seeing is everyone's just sending photos of where they're seeing the book. So I'm just like, it's in Ballarat, it's in Melbourne, it's in Sydney, it's in the Gold Coast. And so that's been so wonderful to see. So yeah, the book is, and it's out in the UK and the USA in the next week. Oh. So it's also out in New Zealand. My community on Facebook, my free community, is the Women's Wellbeing Collective, which is a free Facebook group. And then Instagram, I share a lot of content and a lot of information as well. But you can head to my website. I have a weekly newsletter that goes out, and lots of tools and resources on there as well. And my website is sarahrusbatch.com.
Amazing. Sarah, thank you so much. Congratulations again. I can't wait to see you at the book launch. By the time this episode goes to air, we will have already celebrated your book launch. And yeah, I just can't wait to be a part of that really special celebration, because it's more than a book. It's a new way of life that people can hold in their hands. And I'm really excited for you and for the people that I've now been able to connect with you, if they weren't already, to really think differently about their relationship with alcohol and make some changes to either create a life they love, alcohol-free, or even just consider some changes that they can make to live more than a 5 out of 10, no matter what decisions they make. So thanks again, Sarah, for your time.
Thanks so much for having me, Jodi.
And thank you, listeners. Thank you so much, and really encourage you to reach out and connect with Sarah and her wonderful work. And let me know, please, with any episode. I always love to hear how things are landing for you, what you're taking away from the episodes. So always appreciate those emails, or a review, of course, of the podcast. So thanks again for your time, and I cannot wait to be back with you again next week. Okay, bye. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave a review. To keep the conversation going, I'd love you to join me over on Instagram. You'll find me at Dr. Jodi Richardson. Also, if you'd like a copy of my free 5-day mini email course, Calm Your Anxious Brain, then jump over to my website, drjodirichardson.com, and you can sign up down the bottom. I've really enjoyed having your company. Thanks so much. See you next time.